Thus far in our application, we loaded the single post route as part of our blog page, so that when we click on a post, we exchange the posts page for the single post page. Now, we can absolutely do that, of course. However, sometimes you also have a setup where you want to create a nested route. So where you want to load a certain component or where you want to render certain content inside of another component which is also loaded via routing. So right now we have only one level where we do routing. Here in the blog container, we load different components for different routes, and that's absolutely fine. Now, let's say we want to load a specific post, not inside the blog component, but inside the posts component right beneath our posts here. So for that, I will wrap this in a div and add my route in there, my route component in there. So now I'm in the posts component, add it there. Therefore, of course, I also need to add an import at the top where I import route from React Router DOM, all of that in the posts component. And I now get an error, of course, because the full post component I'm referring to here is also not present in that file. So I need to add an import to that too. Import full post from, and now let's go to that full post folder and import it from the full post file. And now I can render a single post beneath my list of posts because I use route in a different component. And this is in general something you can of course do. You can use the route component wherever you want in your application, as long as the page, the component where you are using it, is wrapped by that browser router. And that of course is the case because we're wrapping the blog component with it. And since the posts component is just a child component of the blog component loaded through a route, this works. Now, the switch statement here in the blog component, of course, is a bit redundant now. I only have one component in there, so maybe I move my outer route in there, though technically this is not required because these two routes will never match for the same path. So we could remove the switch statement. I will leave it here simply as a reference so that you can still compare your code to it. What we can also do in the blog component now is we can get rid of that full post import, which we're not using here anymore. Now, if you save all the files and you go to your post component and you click on a single post, you will see that the URL updates, but the post isn't rendered and the posts are gone too. The reason for this is that we now created a nested route. We have the root route, let's say, here in the blog container. This is the topmost level where we react to any route changes. And then in the posts component, which we load through the router, keep that in mind, we load it, we implement it through the router. In this component here, we now again use route. The issue is for /SOMEID, we're not going to reach that route because we have an exact matching for just slash. So /ID doesn't match that route, so the posts component never gets rendered, which is too bad because it would be in that component that we want to render our full post component for a given ID. Now, to fix this, we can of course remove exact. Then this will match slash and /1, /2 and so on. We should then change the order though, so that slash doesn't also consume the new post first. And now switch also makes sense again because now this route would also be rendered for /new post, but since /new post is found first, this will be rendered first and the router will then stop thereafter. So now with this setup, you will see that indeed we can load a single route beneath our routes. So if I go to just slash, we see just the posts. But if I click on a post, we load that beneath the posts. This already is a nested route. We face an issue though. Let's say we have /posts here and not /nothing. And of course, this means that in the posts component where we navigate, if we were to use a link, we would have to update this to /posts. The same here for this programmatic routing and for the one we're actually using, so that now we're navigating to /posts ID. And now with this in place, you will see, and I should also update the navigation link here to /posts. So now you will see with that, if I click on posts here, we load the posts and I can click on a post, of course. Now you see also that it fails though. We get an error because our nested route here in the posts component, this route parses /ID, and this is not appended to the path of the route which was responsible for loading the posts component. So this is not automatically resolved to posts ID. This is not happening. Instead, this still is /root /ID. So we would have to update this to /posts ID2 to have working nested routing again with our new URL, which is /posts /ID. It's of course very cumbersome to do so. So instead of using posts like this, a better way is to get the current path dynamically, so that this really is a dynamic, a flexible, nested route. And for that, path should be set to something dynamic here, not a hard-coded string. And in there, we probably should use this props match, this match object, and in there is a URL property, which is basically the URL we loaded thus far. So the URL which was responsible for loading this posts component. And that, of course, is exactly the part we need to prepend to our flexible part thereafter. So we can now merge this inside of the curly braces though with our ID, so with /:ID, and remove the part after the curly braces. Now this will match posts ID, and if we ever were to load this component differently, let's say on /all posts, then this would automatically resolve to all posts here because it is dynamic. So now with that, if we save this, we get the same behavior as before, but this just proves that it's working. We're dynamically adding /posts here for our nested route. And this is how you create truly nested routes in your React application with React Router.